Hello and welcome to The Debrief. I am your host. My name is Seth Ressler, and this is a show that is aimed to help Detroit creatives, Detroit artists and entertainers with their career. Each episode, we're going to talk about a different topic and something that we think you can put to use to advance your own career. Today, we are talking about interviews. And here's why. Look, if you look 20, 30 years ago when you were an up-and-coming artist in Detroit and you wanted some exposure, that really meant getting interviewed by one of the major media outlets, whether it was a television station, a news station, the newspaper, or one of the monthly magazines or alt-weekly paper, something like that. Those were your only options. Now, there's good news because with the advance of technology, now anybody with a smartphone and internet connection can really do interviews. And so everybody's got a YouTube channel, everybody's got a podcast, and this is great for Detroit creatives. It means it's much easier for them to get exposure. But there's a downside to it as well. And the downside is this, that the person who may be interviewing you may not have as much experience as one of those professional interviewers at those major media outlets. And so you're not necessarily guaranteed a great interview. So what we wanted to talk about today was what you, as an artist, as an entertainer, as a guest who was being interviewed, what you can do to make sure that you get a great interview. Right? And I wanted to bring on for this episode a guest who has done hundreds, maybe thousands of interviews. I mean, a lot. This is a guy who, if you live in Detroit and you own a television or a radio, you have seen or heard this man. He's been doing celebrity interviews and movie film reviews for over 30 years at this point. Greg Russell, who is the host and producer of the syndicated television show Movie Show Plus. You can see him. I got a whole list here of all the places that you can see this guy. Weekly, he's on Live in the D on Channel 4. He's a celebrity interviewer for Getty Images Worldwide. He can be heard on the Paul W. Smith Show on WJR. He has his own show on the 910 AM Superstation. And he's got a new podcast for the Motown Museum called the Hitsville Next Legacy Podcast. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. You've
Thank
been on
you
this
so
show
much.
many times
Yeah.
before. Greg Russell, good to see you.
Good to see you. It's great to be back home.
So let's talk about interviewing celebrities, because I imagine over the course of your career, you're often interviewing big superstars who have been doing this for a long time,
Right.
like George Clooney, Halle Berry, but also people who are at the beginning of their career.
Right.
Can you tell a difference?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I'll use this person as an example because I love Julia Roberts. But, I go into the room to talk to her. Now, be it if I'm the first person to talk to her or the last, she always gives a nice full interview. You ask a question about the movie and she'll just say, oh, yeah, it was a great time, playing in this film. We got to shoot it in Ireland. I got to tell you, Ireland is so beautiful, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Where, you've got certain parts where you can, either put the whole answer in or cut it up and, make a whole nice interview out of it. Where a lot of times when someone's new and they're not used to it, because most of us are just used to people going, Seth, how you feeling today? I'm fine. Oh, yeah. And that's about it.
I'm fine. That was before how you doing today was a loaded question.
Yeah. How you doing today? Who's asking? What do you mean? But a lot of the folks, when they're first starting out, aren't used to it. So you might just ask them the question about, hey, you're the lead in this new movie. Talk a little bit about playing William Tell. It was fun.
Yeah.
How much fun? A lot.
Right.
And
So this is one of those things, like everything else, that the more you do it, the better you get.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we want to talk about this because I know that you have a number of tips for people who are being interviewed to make them a better interviewer.
Yeah.
Let's actually get to your first tip. Communicate with the host ahead of time.
That's right. If you've got that opportunity, perfect example when you had mentioned about the podcast I'm doing for the Motown Museum, the Hitsville Next Legacy podcast. I've got to meet with all the people beforehand. So they didn't come in and we not know each other and, have to kind of like feel each other out. Met with them before and we just sat up and talked, just like old friends. It'd be like you and I back out having pizza last summer when we were sitting outside just talking. So that when it came time for the interview, it was like, okay, hey, we're buddies. We know, a lot of stuff about each other. Right.
Yeah.
And so then you'll get a better interview or better answers, from the people. And that's only if you get the opportunity, to do it first. Because a lot of times you don't, as you well know. But then, you just kind of go in and try and feel the person out, check them out. You can automatically tell if a person's like a little hesitant as far as giving long answers or whatever, but never attack going, oh, are you trying to hold something back?
Right.
Something along that line. But yeah, just come across friendly.
Well, and even if you can't have either in-person communication or Zoom or something like that ahead of time, I know that when you're sitting down to interview Denzel Washington, it's easy to find information about Denzel Washington.
Absolutely.
Right? But a lot of these up-and-coming artists and entertainers, not a lot comes up when they do a Google search.
Yeah.
I found this even as we've been preparing for this podcast to do shows, is that sometimes it's hard to do research on guests. So anything that they can put together, like you get stuff in advance when you do an interview. Talk about the stuff that you'll get before an interview comes.
Right. I'll get an electronic press kit. Like you said, it'll break down, as example, they said star Denzel Washington, Julia Roberts, Samuel L. Jackson, da-da-da-da-da. And it'll talk about who their character is in the film. Also, it'll have a very short biography of, the things that they've done before, as if we really needed it, for people like that. Yeah. So but the main thing is just reading over about the movie. Also, a lot of times now they're the executive producer as well. So you can bring that up about how did that come about for you, to get you involved that way in the movie. And the thing is, we only get 5 minutes usually. So if anything, it's just, okay, have 5 questions really in your head. Yep. And a tip I always give people about being a good interviewer is also be a good listener. Listen to the response the person gives, because, they might say something about, oh, yeah, man, had a great time shooting down in New Orleans, and whoo, there was a Tuesday night. Boy, oh, boy. Then instead of going, now also you rode a horse in the movie. No, that's when you'll go, oh, really? Well, what happened on that Tuesday night?
Right,
that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So the more that you, as the interviewee, can send the host and the people doing the interview ahead of time, the better.
Right. And especially if you've got a publicist, because that is their job, to get the information out about you to whoever's going to be doing the interviews.
I will say the one thing that I always like in a bio or a press pack or something like that is something that makes them different from everything else. Oh, he also likes, like you said, horseback riding,
right?
Or he's never ridden a horse, because that can come up in the interview and make for a good, interesting story.
Oh, yeah. And I'll even do stuff like that, because you made me think, I wish I could remember now the name of the show, but this was during COVID when we were doing nothing but like 20 Zoom interviews a day. There was this one where this guy was down south and he was riding a horse. And I could just tell by the way he looked on the horse in the show that I don't think he even ever had a dog, because he just was like that. So I asked him, I said, the part where you come out, I said, you're not much of a horse person, are you? He's going, nope. Only Mustang I want to be on is one from Ford.
Right.
So,
all right, let's get to tip number 2. Be professional. And talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Just with the way you interact with the person who's interviewing you and the way you're, just doing yourself, because there's nothing worse than like you're interviewing me right now and I'm just, Seth, yeah, man, and blah, 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 blah. And, looking down, not talking clearly, where you can't understand me. And the thing is, like you said, now everything is being videoed.
Right.
So, somebody's shooting that and people at home will be looking going, well, what's up, with this guy? Well, the main thing is, get good eye contact. Also smile and, just come across as nice and friendly. People like to buy stuff from people who they think are nice.
That's absolutely true. I mean, people like the work itself, whether it's a movie or it's some other piece of art. But I have had things where, especially when I was working in radio, where I kind of liked the band. It was fine. And then they were really cool in an interview. And I became a fan because of that.
And you just made me think of something. Now, true enough, this is going way back, folks. You've heard of this group called the Beatles? You ever?
I've heard of them.
Okay.
They came up in my history class.
Oh, okay. If you get a chance, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because, when they had the Beatles Get Back, coming out at Christmas time, so everything was Beatles all over the place. They had on TV some of their old interviews from like the 1960s. Now, true enough, everybody liked them. They liked their music. The thing that made people really fall in love with them were their interviews. Yeah. You watch them. I mean, they're funny guys. They're witty. They were having a good time with the people who were interviewing them.
You know who else is like that? Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Love him because of his interview. He's just such a nice guy.
Right.
So what else is involved in being professional?
Well, like we said, just the way you conduct yourself, the way you carry yourself. Something else is give a nice answer. I mean, again, you ask a person a question, don't just give a yes or no answer. Like, are you having a good time here in Detroit? Yes.
Right.
Okay. Because then they'll have to drag out, well, what is the good time for you here in Detroit? Right. I like Coney dogs. Are you an American or a Lafayette?
Right.
Just,
Go somewhere with it.
give some nice answers. Like, hey, I'm having a great time here in Detroit. I got to tell you, my first time ever at Belle Isle Park. Love seeing that place. Your downtown is beautiful. And it's just such a lovely place. The people here are just so warm and nice. Yeah. There you go.
Right, great.
That's going to be the opening interview, right?
Yeah. Another thing I'll put on the list with Be Professional is be on time.
That's right. Or what happened with us today is we had an emergency at my house where I had to take care of it. And so there's no way I was going to be here at the exact time that we picked because of where I live. Now, instead of not saying anything or doing anything and just leaving you in a lurch, guess what, folks? We all carry these things in our pocket now.
It's true.
Cell phones, they can text or call. Did you know that?
Right. No, I got a text from you, and you said, hey, so, and I understand. I have 2 cars at home. One's got a dead battery, and the other's got a flat tire. So, like that happens.
Yeah.
But it's not an excuse to not communicate.
Right. That's it. And like we said, if something comes up, call. A person will appreciate that. Like, oh, okay, great. Then, get here when you get here and you do it and you take off or you just do what you're supposed to be doing. But if I'm looking for you at 1:30 and it's 2:00, haven't heard from you, it's like, okay, then we're shutting down. And guess what? We're not really going to talk very well about you.
Right. All right, let's get into tip number 3. Know the audience.
Yes. And what that really means is knowing, because like the people who you're talking about right now, I'm an entertainer, just like you guys. And so I know, what you're going through, what you need to know. Whereas if I'm going to be on like a kids show, I'm going to know about, the kids and talk about, oh, yeah, so your favorite is Roscoe the Bear? Right. I like Roscoe too. He's really well. He's good. I like him. But then I'm doing something for like AARP. Hey, who knows about Medicare Plan C? Anybody out there? Let's share some tips.
Right.
Don't try and throw in something that just won't fit with them.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'll speak at radio conferences, for example, and I'll always ask, am I talking to people who are salespeople? They go out and they sell advertisements, or am I talking to people who are programming people? They deal with whatever's going on the airwave because you talk differently to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be true as a guest as well.
Yeah.
Right? Also, there are different settings where sometimes it's okay to use profanity, sometimes it's not, depending on the setting, things like that, right?
Right. I mean, you wouldn't go to, the United Church Group and just kind of go, boy, you guys are all good looking, blah, blahs. Somebody got to pick Sister Jones up off the floor there.
Right. So, I mean, the other thing I will say is that the sense of humor may work or not work depending on the audience. And this is something that, when I worked in radio stations, like you have, you're in a room, there's no feedback.
Right.
And then I went out for a little while and was doing some comedy stuff in comedy clubs. And I know you've done that as well. And you get instant feedback.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, I had a joke about Nickelback. And Nickelback is like the easy, like it's pretty hack material at this point to make fun of Nickelback.
Right.
But I had a woman who was 70 years old who came up to me afterwards and she's like, I like your stuff, except I have to ask you, what's a Nickelback? And it was because, I thought that was a universal joke.
Yeah.
I was like, everybody's going to get it and not necessarily. So you really got to know who that audience is if you want to resonate with them.
Change for a dime, right?
Yeah. Right. So. All right, next tip. Don't go too long. Don't be too brief. You touched on this a little bit, but expand on this a little bit.
Yeah, well, again, don't go too long. Just means if you ask a question, just give a nice answer. Yep. But, then don't all of a sudden bring it back to, because, back when I was driving down the street one day and it wasn't even really, it's not even really connecting with your question.
Right.
But, just rambling. Just, give your nice answer. Boom. But then again, like we said, don't be too short. Again, no one-word answers. Yeah. Like we said, just talk about what was it like recording in the historic Motown Studio A, just making that up. Good.
Yeah. I will tell, when I train interviewers, and I have trained people to do interviews over the years, I will tell them never ask a yes or no question, or never ask a question that could get a one-word answer.
Right.
Like, so where did you grow up?
Yeah.
Because you might just say, Chicago or whatever, and then it sort of stalls out. That an experienced interviewer, I think, will often, one of the things that I like to do is make a statement and then say, tell me about that. Go, oh, you grew up in Chicago. Tell me. And that lets you go anywhere you want.
Yeah.
But sometimes, younger interviewers or less experienced interviewers won't know to do that. Right.
And something else I always tell people about being a good interviewer is also being a good listener. listen to the answer that the person is giving you back. Because you and I, we did an example before we even started about, a person going, oh, yeah, well, when I was growing up, I got into music because, as it turns out, Stevie Wonder's my cousin. And now, even though your next question, you're going, okay, I understand that you like red car. I mean, it's like, no, you get an answer like that. And it's like, wow, talk a little about his influence and, what that meant to you growing up and just knowing that you're part of that musical history heritage.
And that listening is important on both sides of the conversation. I mean, that's what makes it a conversation and not just an interview. Right? And
that's the other thing, too. That's the way I like to do it. And I know just like you, because we're doing it, it's best now to make things a conversation. Like you said, this isn't the 1960s anymore, where when you watch the old newscasters, where they just kind of go, so Seth, do you like wearing dark colored shirts?
I do.
Tell us about that.
Right.
Where now people want
have a lot to say about it.
Right, where now people want conversations. They want to feel like they're included.
Yep.
Because there's nothing better than, and I've had people say this before when they'll see me interviewing somebody and they kind of go, I felt like I was right there in the room with you guys. But I just, was watching you two converse. And it's like, great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next tip. Know what you want to plug.
That's right. Know what you're out here trying to plug right now. And but what you mean, of course, by that is, like you said, if it's a musician, you're out there, you're trying to plug your song or your album or whatever. So don't forget, tell people about, our new album, you can download it on, blah, 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 blah. And it was a great time recording it. And I got to tell you, the song number 2, My Heart Belongs to You, I dedicated that to my mom who just passed. Stuff like that. And talk about it. But most importantly, let people know where they can get it.
Yes.
And how they can get it.
Yeah.
And, so do that.
And here's something that I think is important with this that people don't always realize is because sometimes stuff is recorded and then aired later.
Right.
So make sure you know when this interview is actually going to come out so that you're not plugging a concert or an event that's over.
Right.
It comes out, right?
Yep. Yeah, just kind of go, oh, man, don't forget, check my show out, January 13th, 2022.
Right. No, yeah. So at the very least, have a website or something.
And that's what everybody needs nowadays. I one time asked a friend, and this was like a couple of years back because they've definitely changed. I said, oh, well, what's your website? Well, I don't have one. But you say you have a business. I do. No, you don't. If you don't have a website now, you don't have a business or, anything like that.
So, yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
All right. Last tip here. Pay attention to mic technique.
Right. Know how to use the mic. Just like you and I. We kind of like look this way and look that way, but we're basically the same distance that we've been during the whole interview.
Yeah.
Where there's nothing worse than all of a sudden talking like this, and then you just kind of go, yeah, but you know what, Seth? Because even though you might not hear, but the mic is now going nuts.
Right.
And they're going, what? Wait, whoa.
Yeah. It's true. I've had to go back and edit interviews like that. And it's a mess. It's not fun to do, Right.
And then also kind of like with the way we're doing it really from the side.
Yep.
So that you don't get in and go, Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers, because that's going to be.
Right. Yeah. There's it's called a plosive, right?
Yeah.
It's that puff of air that does not sound good when it comes out, because you almost want to talk just a little bit past the
right.
microphone.
And, find a person who maybe has been in radio, especially, who can just show you mic techniques. Everybody knows someone.
And frankly, if you do have somebody who's a little bit more experienced, you can ask them.
Yeah.
What's the best, what makes me sound best on this?
Right.
I think asking questions before they actually hit record or hit, go live to stream or whatever it may be.
Right.
Is really helpful.
Right. Unless you're doing a red carpet, where they're just bringing the people up.
Yep.
But then again, you only usually get one question on the red carpet anyway.
Right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Show up early, talk to the people. Just like, again, so you can get a rapport and know that, okay, hey, well, this is my buddy, sitting right here next to me. And so we're going to talk and have a good time.
All right. All right. Well, that's lots of good advice. So this is something new that we're adding to the show. I want to hear some bad advice. All right. So Greg Russell.
Oh, that's scary.
Scary. Greg Russell, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever gotten?
I think it was about preparing for like the 5-minute interviews that we do. Truthfully, the thing is, if you've got 5 minutes, this is just my thought. have in your mind 5 questions, because if the person is a good person who is you're interviewing, their answer for it, all of them are at least going to be a minute or close to. Or, maybe also, like I said, also be a good listener. Listen to what they're saying. One time I saw these people, they were setting up. Now, I didn't realize it was at the Toronto Film Festival. I saw these 2 ladies at a table. They had the yellow pads and all like that and all these books. And they're writing out all this stuff like they're studying for the SATs. And I said, am I supposed to do it this way? They said, yeah, join on in. As it turns out, by them they were from Toronto. Yeah. They were doing interviews for 10 movies a day. And they thought I was too. Right. So it was kind of like bad advice, but just.
So you can over-prepare.
Yeah, you can. And then you've got everything going through your mind. But really, and then also there's nothing, you don't want to see a person like when they're doing that type of interview, just kind of like, yeah, so Seth, your dog.
Yeah.
Margot. She's a collie.
Sometimes interview guests will ask me if they can get the questions ahead of time. And I don't like to send questions ahead of time because I'm worried about exactly that they're going to write it out word for word and they're going to read it word for word. I like people to, be able to be prepared. Right. So I'll say, we're going to talk about these topics. Right. But I won't tell them what the actual questions are to sort of avoid that over-preparedness. It sounds stiff.
Right. And you're absolutely right, because they'll look at those questions thinking, these are going to be the 5. You might throw a different one in because of an answer that they gave, and then they're going to be like, that wasn't on the list. And it's like, right. Sorry.
What, is this a gotcha interview? Who are you, Tim Russert?
Right.
All right. So one of the tips we mentioned was know what you're going to plug. You've got a brand new podcast that you're doing for the Motown Museum. Tell us a little bit about it.
That's right. It's for the Motown Museum, and it's for their company or division called Hitsville Next, and it's the Hitsville Next Legacy podcast. And we did 6 different podcasts for Black History Month, and they all deal with family businesses where they're multi-generational. We've got one business in there that this is now the 5th or 6th generation, and it started over 100 years ago here in Detroit. And just talking about, working with family, what it's like having to see every day at home and then see every day at work. And then also what they all had to do to stay, modern. Because most of the businesses, if they didn't progress, all would have been gone. So it's very interesting. We've got everything from a construction company to a funeral home to a shoe repair shop to entertainment venues in Detroit, and also a lady who is the person who basically runs the Aretha Amphitheater. Oh, okay. Her company, Right Entertainment, they're the ones who get all the entertainment that's there. They run the venue, and that's a very funny thing too. I had 3 women who are now running their family businesses. And even to this day, I asked them, I said, how often does a person come in, who's trying to do business with you and kind of go, okay, where's the guy in charge? And they all tell me the same thing. They look at him and go, he's right here. And that's when the person, and, heads on out. But all types of interesting stories, there. So you can check them out on every platform that you can find all your favorite podcasts.
All right, cool. Greg, thank you so much for taking some time. I think this is going to be hopefully this is going to be really useful for a lot of Detroit creatives out there.
I hope so. And as always, if you ever want me to come back to talk about anything, you got me.
All right, until next time, Detroit's moving. Keep up.